Hey, what's up YouTube? This is my review of the CFK Cutlery Mini Bolo. Now, a bolo is a type of machete. This knife, however, is just based on the classic shape of a bolo machete, but it is a knife. It is D2 tool steel. The blade length is 6 3/4 inches. Now, this is currently available on Amazon. I will include a link to the CFK Cutlery store on Amazon, and you can check out their stuff. They're very hit or miss. They have some really interesting designs, and then they have stuff that doesn't look so good. So pick and choose. Now you see that other blade there, that is their mini parang that I have previously reviewed several months ago. Now you see the Bolo doesn't really have a pointed tip. You know, the blade shape at the end, it's more like a skinner would be shaped, whereas this, the parang, more like a cleaver. Now I will include a link to the previous review of this. I was very pleased with the performance of the mini parang, and that's what really inspired me to try out this mini Bolo. Now back to the Bolo. This thing is true full tang construction, as you can see. Those handle scales are polished micarta. It's also got a little bit of jimping on a thumb rest as well as a tubed lanyard hole. Now there is a newer version of this currently, which is the exact same blade, but the handle scales basically have been upgraded to look a little nicer. They're still micarta, but the new version has nicer looking handle scales. Right, so check the text description box for all the relevant links. Now the price on this, as well as that parang, is about $80. Prices are subject to change, however. Alright, I did a lot of stuff with this. Here is some batoning footage. Now, the secret to batoning, in my mind, is use a really heavy baton. Like, use like a fallen tree as your baton. Because anything can baton well if you hit it hard enough. You could baton with a bowling ball if you hit it with a skyscraper. No, I'm just kidding. But this thing, it actually did very well at the batoning. And yes, I know, you should split with a hatchet. Well, I've reviewed many hatchets. I love splitting with hatchets. But if you didn't have a hatchet for whatever reason out in the field, you could baton with this. That had a knot in it, but, you know, some of this wood, it's all twisty and knotty, but that's a good test. And since I started wood carving, I have found another good use for batoning. It just allows you to get pieces of wood the exact width and thickness that you need for certain projects, just like more precise than splitting with a hatchet. Alright, so you see, it did well. Very durable. I can't imagine it breaking. Full tang and fairly wide. Here it is making some shavings. You want to start a fire. You need little shavings for tinder. Right, now one thing I did notice as I was making the shavings, the factory edge on this is not so good. Now, for the review, I wanted to show how it came from the factory. And of course I did the best I could. I mean, it's not doing bad there, but it could be better. Now this comes with a fairly nice sheath. It's kind of an old-timey looking leather sheath. Right, it's got that belt loop there, and it's pretty nice for the price of this. It comes with that fire starter with the striker, and it does hold it in. But I wouldn't go running with it upside down because it doesn't hold it in super tightly, but it did hold it in. So yeah, it's a pretty cool traditional looking sheath. Kind of has the look of a custom leather sheath. What's that you say? Test out the fire starter? I think I will do that. Alright, so I took my shavings and I put them on like a little mat of bark just to keep them together. And also the bark itself is very good for catching fire as well. So you see the fire starting rod does works pretty well, and you can use the spine to strike as I did. The spine has that 90-degree angle that makes it easy to use as a striker. Now about a sharp spine like that, in addition to using it as a striker, it's also useful because you can make scrapings of bark with the sharp spine. Right, and I didn't do that because I just thought of it now as I'm narrating, but there's more than one use for that. Another tip, this thin bark right here, it's actually really good for catching flame. Basically it'll burn like paper. In fact, I didn't even need those shavings. I could have just like shredded that really thin bark and used that. But whatever, I mean, I had to cut something with the knife. So there you go. Yes, fire, fire, fire. Oh, this would probably be a good time for just a short note on fire safety. When you see people lighting fires on YouTube, of course, I'm watching the fire like a hawk, and I have ways to put out the fire. So young people out there, just because you see fires on a video, that does not mean you should run around the wilderness just starting fires. Do not do that. Yeah, you got to be extra careful, especially if you're in the wilderness, because you probably are not bringing a fire extinguisher on your hike, so be extra careful. Yeah, what I'm showing there, see, you think the fire is out. It looks like the fire went out. It's not out. You can actually revive the fire with another piece of the very thin bark. But why do we enjoy seeing fires on videos? It's because for most of evolution, we were just like primal, feral cavemen sitting around a fire. There was no internet. Speaking of going up in flames, let me talk about the reputation of CFK Cutlery. No, I'm kidding. I do like this brand simply because the prices are relatively good, and they have some interesting selections. Oh, and I did do a lot more stuff with this coming up, but just gaze into the fire for a moment while I talk about CFK. All right, so there are rumors that the CFK blades are actually made in Pakistan. Okay, they say it's made in the UK, but some say Pakistan. Now, me personally, I judge a cutting tool by its performance. I don't really care where it's made. Could be made on Mars. I will judge a tool by how well it can be used as a tool. But I felt it was important to mention those rumors in case that's a big factor for you. Alright, doing more stuff with this blade. You can carve with this blade. The blade doesn't really have much weight to it. It's a lot easier to carve with a hatchet or just a longer, heavier knife. So I wouldn't really recommend this for carving like this, but again, if you were out in the field and if this was the only blade that you had with you, then you could use it to carve. Now I'm making that into a spike because it's really just kind of a gnarly, crappy piece of scrap wood and there's not really much else I can do with it. Right, and another thing I did notice, again, the factory edge on this is going to need some work because just as I was carving this, I noticed it wasn't really biting in that well. Now that's going to be no problem for my subscribers because they're all knife ninjas and they're all really good at sharpening. Now during my previous review of a CFK knife, somebody asked if I think it's really D2 steel. Yeah, I think it is because number one, what else would it be? I mean, I've used like all the common steels, cheap steels, and I could usually tell. I mean, I definitely don't think it's 440A because I've had many knives that are that and it performs differently. I know a lot of knife makers that order all different steels, and I can tell you D2 is a ubiquitous tool steel. It's widespread, it's not particularly expensive, and I just feel like if they were going to lie, they would have chosen a much more expensive, exclusive steel to claim it was. So yeah, I think it's D2, and if it's not, then it's another very closely related tool steel. And that is as pointed as my spike is going to get, at least until I modify the edge. Alright, so final thoughts on this CFK Mini Bolo. It's a very strong design. I mean, it will not break through any normal use. The only hit that I can really give it, again, is the edge. The relief grind is too narrow. They need to take that edge bevel back a ways, and this would cut a lot better. Now, most of my subscribers can do that. I mean, with a few tweaks, this could be a very good cutting machine. I would advise putting an extremely fine edge on the first 1/3 and use that for your fine work. Another thing this would be good for that I didn't show, like I said, especially the tip on this, it's shaped like a skinning knife. Now, I didn't buy this as a skinner, but again, if you sharpened it up a bit, you could use it for, processing animals. I'm sure you could also chop up your lunch with it if you so chose. But altogether, I do think this is one of their best designs, and yeah, I do recommend it, once you customize the edge. It does not have a piercing tip. It's definitely not any sort of tactical weapon. It's more for bushcraft and fieldcraft, which is very big these days. And I have to say, the knife held up well. Very solid. I hope you enjoyed seeing this blade. Check out the Amazon links. They do support the channel. This has been We All Juggle Knives.